Good afternoon. I am Kelly Gardner, and over the next 15 or so minutes, I will present a strategy for further global market entry, expansion and management of Ella's Kitchen, a UK-based food company that specialises in organic baby and infant food. During the presentation, I will cover the following areas. An international business management self-assessment, where I assess the company's current position for further globalisation, as Ella's is already operating in several countries worldwide. Internationalisation mission and goals, where I will lay out the long-term objectives of the business. An internal and external environment assessment, which will help to better understand the internal and external factors that impact the company's growth. This will include a business functions and operations evolution assessment to describe how the company will need to evolve and adapt its current processes to enact the new strategy. A market entry analysis to understand the foreign markets that we seek to expand into. A competitive business approach, which will ensure that the company is optimised and able to compete in specific foreign markets as well as the wider global economy. A foreign investment and entry opportunities to detail our tactics for attracting foreign investment and entering foreign markets before providing an overarching summary. So let's take a look at the IBM self-assessment. An IBM self-assessment should include 3 questions. Are there potential benefits for the company? In other words, does global market expansion and entry offer new opportunities for the company to grow and make profit? Does the company have the necessary management skills? Meaning, does the company have the right people, skills and processes in place to succeed on the global market front? And will the costs outweigh the benefits? To reap the potential rewards of global market expansion and entry, what are the costs or impacts required, and is it worth doing? All really useful things to consider when conducting such an assessment. The potential benefits for further global market expansion and entry are there for the taking. Ella's being in a unique situation in that it already has a considerable global market presence as a multinational food company. Its presence in the US marketplace and China, whose 1.4 billion population makes up over 1/6 of the global economy, means that it already has access to a considerable chunk of the global marketplace. Given all of this success, you may ask, would further global market expansion and entry into other markets provide further opportunities for Ella's? And the answer is almost certainly. Yes, it is already a profitable and successful multinational with a meaningful presence in the UK, US, Canada, China and several European countries. But it has no market presence in Africa, South America, Australasia or the wider Asian markets. These markets account for half of the world population. The opportunities for growth are self-evident. Whilst accessing the 1.2 billion people living in Africa might be difficult for a company that is focused on sustainable and healthy infant food, given the degree of poverty that persists in Africa now. The predicted population and economic growth across the continent over the next decade makes this an exciting proposition. Likewise, the 1.38 billion people living in India, a population that is due to overtake China's within the decade, is another potentially enormous source of revenue. Australia's 25 million population is nowhere near as impressive, but one would assume that marketing, packaging and customer habits in Australia would be similar to those in the UK, US and Canada, and therefore could present an easy win in terms of expansion and market entry. So on to question number 2. Does the company have the necessary management skills to take advantage of these clear opportunities? Yes, it does. The management staff are already well versed in delivering success in a global marketplace. Whilst management would likely need to bring on some additional local expertise for market, customer and marketing research purposes, as well as some additional product research and development, all the evidence of their growth and expansion since 2006 would suggest that they have the necessary management expertise to succeed. And looking at number 3, will the costs outweigh the benefits? Whilst it's hard to estimate the costs associated with expansion into the new markets identified, it also seems clear that the access to the remaining 50% of the world's population would likely provide a return on investment, making it worthwhile, especially in India and Australia, and that the future projected growth and economic development in places like Africa offer future opportunities for growth, but perhaps not right at the present time. So overall, the IBM self-assessment shows that Ehlers is ready to expand into new global markets and would benefit from doing so, particularly in India and Australia, which is where the future strategy will now focus. Internationalisation, mission and goals. So here we can see Ehlers' mission, the new mission. So the mission is to continue the global market expansion of Ehlers Kitchen into India and Australia to take advantage of the 1.4 billion potential customers in the two countries and to continue to expand our global footprint in South and East Asia and Australasia, all in order to increase profits and Ehlers Kitchen's global market share. And whilst Ehlers has a very clear mission and brand that focuses on healthy and organic foods as well as sustainability, for the purposes of this strategy, I have chosen to focus on market share and profit, since it is an internal strategy focused on growth rather than an external strategy with potential public relations benefits. Needless to say, any strategy must be sympathetic to these wider ethical considerations and must absolutely not undermine Ehlers' corporate culture, values or standards. So here we can see the goals that have been set out. First one, conduct detailed market analysis and consumer testing in Australia to refine marketing and products. With smart objectives and goals, it's measurable. So the measure on that is market analysis, consumer testing, planned, conducted and delivered, and its time based is by January 2023. Second goal is the same as the first for Australia, but it's for India, and it's measurable the same as the one above, but because of the changes in the packaging, it's not going to be as compatible. There's going to be a lot more R&D involved. That'll be delivered in January 2024. Third goal, achieve a foothold in the Australian market. So we want to achieve an approximate 5% market share by January 2024. Achieve a foothold in the Indian market. Again, 5% market share by January 2026. Achieve a comparable UK market in Australia, which is 30% share by January 2029, and the next one for India, 30% market share by January 2036. So like I've said, given that breaking into the Indian market is assessed to likely be more difficult than breaking into Australia due to the similarities between the Australian population and existing markets in which Ehlers already has a presence, the timelines for achieving success, like I've said, have been modified accordingly. They are based on Ehlers Kitchen's previous rates of growth since founding in 2006. Moving on to the internal and external environment assessment. To assess the internal environment, there are a number of different tools available. However, for the purposes of this strategy, I used a value chain performance analysis as the primary means to identify key functions or resources within the company which add value, and considered whether these would be affected by the planned expansion into India and Australia. So looking at the first thing here on the performance analysis, the product, came to the conclusion that the product range has been of great success in a number of countries already, and the range is vast. Therefore, it is assessed to be very likely that the product will be transferable to other markets. Looking at the research and development, R&D, there is a small R&D department within Ehlers, but it is very possible that it could become overwhelmed by additional expansion. Consideration to expansion should be given during the initial market and customer analysis phases. Financial position, yes, as described previously, Ella's has an annual profit of over £10 million, which would be sufficient to begin the expansion into Australia and India. Organisational structure, it has already proven itself capable of expansion and sustaining new market presence. It will likely require a modest increase on the number of staff to be able to cope with the expansion. And operations, and again, has proven itself capable already of expansion without compromising on the cost and quality of the product, so no concerns there. For the external environment assessment, I used Porter's 5 forces analysis, which helps to identify major market trends, opportunities, threats through the analysis of competition and change forces. And after looking at the questions that the 5 points that model raises, it is assessed that the external environment assessment is equally as positive and suggests that the strategy developed must focus on harnessing the increasing customer demand for healthy and sustainable foods if it is to be able to seize some of the market share. The initial market analysis and customer testing process, coupled with the development of a detailed marketing strategy, is therefore tantamount importance and will be covered in the next section. Market entry analysis. So looking at the market entry analysis, we're looking at 3 things: customer demand, marketing, and local taste slash variation. Customer demand: do Australians and Indians want healthy, organic and sustainable infant food? And initial examination of the Australian and Indian marketplaces online suggests that there is demand for such products, so we would anticipate that Ella's would have a good uptake there. Marketing, because there is demand there, we would say that Ella's existing product offering and marketing should be sufficient to begin gaining a foothold in both markets. Obviously, languages, wording, all of those things will have to be considered. Proper translation will all have to be considered for correct marketing campaigns. Local tastes and variation. The products need to be changed to suit local markets. This would need to be undertaken as part of a detailed customer testing process, which would in due course inform the expanded R&D department, which could then focus on refining future market specific products, so making sure that we are providing exactly what those marketplaces are wanting. Looking at the competitive business approach for Ella's. To develop a competitive business strategy, Porter's Diamond was used to develop a competitive strategy in the international market. Using this analysis to see how best to construct a strategy, it helps us pose 4 questions and the analysis from those questions. So you can see here on the slide the questions around strategy, structure and rivalry, and the analysis is that these factors should remain unchanged in both India and Australia, given how little it is anticipated the workforce will need to grow. Then looking at factor conditions, there is a real opportunity in due course to scope whether manufacturing in China could be cheaper and make distribution in the East cheaper overall. Home demand conditions. Australia, as I've said, is very similar in its outlook and therefore the business strategy is readily transferable. India is not as developed as the West but has a rapidly expanding middle class and therefore presents a similar opportunity for growth. Then looking at the related and supporting industries. Factories in Scotland, France and Italy are capable of manufacturing Ella's food at competitive prices. This means that their margins are kept lower, meaning they can retail food at a more affordable price whilst maintaining profits. Foreign investment and entry opportunities. There are a number of ways in which Ella could expand into India and Australia. However, it makes sense for Ella's to continue using the current model, which they have used successfully in their existing overseas markets. Their current approach has been to set up their own operations overseas, including marketing and distribution, but to manufacture goods in Europe and export them. This is known as foreign direct investment. This is how they should begin in both India and Australia, since initial outlay costs would be lower. In future, however, once established, they may be able to reduce costs by shifting production to India and/or Australia. In summary, this presentation shows that there are considerable opportunities for further global expansion for Ella's Kitchen, particularly in Australia and India over the next decade. Access to an additional 1.4 billion potential customers, as well as future potential to reduce manufacturing costs, makes for a hugely exciting proposition. Risks, particularly the requirement to modestly expand the company's core staff and R&D departments, are minimal, and the initial financial outlay to undertake detailed market research and customer testing is negligible compared to the potential rewards, and easily affordable given Ella's current annual turnover. Therefore, the future strategy must be focused on the company's mission and objectives, and focused in the short term on the market expansion to Australia and in the medium term to India. Thank you. All references are on the final slide.